fourth speaker of the day. David, will you please join me on the stage here? So David Lee Khim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital, formerly a B2B software marketer at HubSpot. Here we go. Here's David. David is telling us why we should not copy HubSpot. So take it away. Man, you're on mute. Testing audio, 1, 2, 3.
There it is. How about that?
There we go.
Had my mute button on. All right. Hey, everyone. All right. So I'm going to assume everyone can see my screen here. So today we're going to talk about why you shouldn't copy HubSpot's content strategy. We'll explain a little bit about HubSpot a little bit, but this is something we feel extremely passionate about because folks tend to look at HubSpot and decide to copy them kind of without thinking. So for those who aren't familiar with HubSpot, it's a B2B software company that has CRM, marketing, sales, customer service software that was founded in 2006. And they were known for coining the term inbound marketing. Now, over the years, they've created a really successful marketing blog followed by a sales and customer service blog that has driven over tens of millions of organic views per month. And I had the opportunity to spend 6 years at HubSpot and see this growth happen. I started when there were about 600 employees. There are over 5,000 employees now. And I got to learn and build some of these strategies and playbooks. And today, we're going to focus on the HubSpot blog. And this is the golden standard now for content marketing for good reason. The thing is, folks kind of make the mistake of just following it blindly and looking at what HubSpot's doing and copying. And before we dig into why that's a mistake, let's zoom out a little bit and look at where most of us are at. This is some stats looking at Ahrefs. If we put in our website domain into the Site Explorer tool, we might get some stats that look like this, where the domain rating, a measure of website authority, is maybe low 10s, 20s to 60s. We might have a couple backlinks that came in organically. We might have some referring domains and ranking for some organic keywords. Probably not on page 1 or 2, maybe not even 3, but you have the opportunity to move up the pages. Now, when we compare ourselves side by side with HubSpot, they have a domain rating of 92 out of 100. They have 50 million backlinks from 250,000 referring domains, and they're ranking for over 3 million keywords. What this means is for HubSpot, they can rank for almost every single keyword that they target. In fact, the moment they publish a blog post, you wait a couple days, maybe 2 to 3 days, and they're on page 1 for that keyword that they're targeting, oftentimes in positions 1 to 3. Now, if we were at HubSpot and we could rank for any keyword we could, what would you do? You would target all the high search volume keywords, right? Because you want to grow that traffic. And that's what HubSpot does. They wrote this blog post about keyword shortcuts for Google Chrome, which has nothing to do with their products, has nothing to do with CRM or marketing or sales or customer service. But guess what? It brings in a lot of search traffic. Even more useless, I'd say, is this blog post about the shrug emoji, but they rank number 2 for shrug emoji, which has over 300,000 searches per month. That's a lot of traffic. And I saw this tweet earlier today from Cameron at Shopify, and I think this captures the situation as accurately as you can get. And the thing is, HubSpot can do this. They can create these roundup posts. They can create this really cheap content that's easy to create because they have the high domain authority. But the thing is, for us, when you think of content economics, cheap content is highly prevalent on the internet, as you likely know. And that's because it's easy to make. Anyone can write it. You can pay anyone to produce it. And the expensive content is harder to produce, but there isn't as much of that. So HubSpot does this because they have this high domain authority. They can rank for almost anything despite creating potentially, lower quality content. And they can do this because of the content flywheel that they've built over the last 15 years. From the day that their CTO, Dharmesh, wrote the first blog post, they've been publishing content nonstop. And by publishing content, you have the opportunity to capture the keywords you want to rank for. And when you promote that content, you build links. HubSpot organically got links over 15 years. And in the last 5 or so years, they built a dedicated backlinking team to get links to the most important pages on their site. And with those links and producing content, they build authority. With more authority, they get more rankings on page 1. And with higher rankings, they get traffic. Traffic turns into leads. Leads turns into revenue. And that revenue is reinvested into producing more content. And the other flywheel that we can share a little bit about here is they also have a business flywheel that this feeds into. They know that if we get millions of visitors to their website and 1% of those folks start using our free products, some percentage of those people are going to become paying customers. So they're playing with large numbers here, and that's why they can grow the top of funnel so much and why it works for their business. And meanwhile, for most of us, we're back over here where domain authority might be in our 20s or 30s, and it's hard to rank for the keywords we want to rank for because there's so much competition, and we need to compete and differentiate on quality. So instead of playing the game that HubSpot's playing, what should you do instead? At Omniscient Digital, we created this barbell strategy that we borrowed from financial investment portfolio theory, where 80% of your investments, in this case money, are put into safe, low-risk investments. In the US, that'd be things like index funds, S&P 500, these bonds. And these are things that are relatively safe, with a high predictability that you're going to get some percentage of return month over month. May not be a lot, may not be a big return, but you're going to get something over the long term. And then the other 20% of the portfolio is invested into high risk, potentially big payoff investments. A couple of years ago, this was something like cryptocurrencies. 10 years ago, Bitcoin wasn't worth anything. Now, I think it just hit over $50,000 for a Bitcoin. So these folks back then knew that Bitcoin might become nothing, or it could become this amazing thing. And for the folks that decide to take a bet on Bitcoin, that's making people a lot of money right now. When we apply this to the barbell content strategy, we think about this in terms of product-led content, which you might have heard about in a previous talk, and buzzworthy content. When we talk about product-led content, this is your bread and butter. This is content that's focused on topics your audience cares about, that has search volume. It's somewhat related to your product. It follows the customer journey from top of funnel, middle, and bottom of funnel. And with product-led content, you have some semblance of predictable ROI. You can, within a margin of error, predict how much traffic might come into this if you were rank for position 3 for a particular keyword. And with that traffic, you might be able to predict how much leads you get and how those leads close into sales. With buzzworthy content, on the other hand, this is targeting a completely different goal. It's trying to optimize for the potential upside of this risky bet. And when we think of buzzworthy content, this might be stuff that goes viral, gets a lot of social shares, and gets a lot of backlinks. And the thing about buzzworthy content is you can't really measure or predict performance like you would with paid ads or product-led content. This is almost, in most cases, an all or nothing play. And the worst case scenario is you might have some really good content. So when we think about buzzworthy content, we might think about these big campaigns, but the fact is HubSpot started with very humble beginnings. You might be familiar with their State of Inbound Marketing report that started in the late 2000s, where they surveyed a bunch of marketers, packaged that up into some insights and a summary, turned it into a PDF, and gave it away. And people flocked to this. Journalists gave it a lot of backlinks. Marketers were looking forward to it every year. And now it's something they've continued doing over the last 10 years. Now they have a huge microsite development effort dedicated to it, because something that started off as a potential bet that may or may not succeed worked out, and now they're doubling down on it. And keep in mind that this doesn't highlight the 90% of failed attempts of creating buzzworthy content that I was actually a part of. So to see that one of many actually succeeded, this is when that one succeeds, the payoff comes. So at a high level, let's talk about how to implement this barbell strategy. I didn't go into product-led content as much because it's already been covered, but you want to find those product-led topics. You map it to the customer journey and brainstorm those topics related to your product or service. And again, we're not talking about search volume here yet. You want to focus on the audience, your ideal customer persona. When you have those topics, then you map them to keywords. At Omniscient Digital, we firmly believe that every piece of content should have some sort of SEO backing to it, even if it's thought leadership. Even if the keyword isn't high search volume, try to map your content to something that people are actually searching for. We've actually found that a lot of the keyword research tools are quite inaccurate. I had an embarrassing moment where we were talking to a client and I said, hey, you're ranking for this keyword. Ahrefs shows that it has 10 search volume, so you're probably not getting much traffic to it. And the response was, actually, that's our #1 converting page and we're getting a ton of leads to it. So there's a grain of salt that you should take with the numbers here, and also just make sure to understand that even if the tools show that it's no search volume, if it's something that your audience or your ICP, ideal customer persona, is interested in, it would make sense to actually target that as a topic. The straightforward piece is to create that content. And the last piece I'd like to challenge folks here on is dedicating maybe one piece of buzzworthy content per quarter. And that might be original research or thought leadership, but making sure you carve out the space to take some of these bets. Otherwise, you're going to be focused on kind of this slow growth in terms of the product-led content that's more predictable, but slower, whereas taking some of these bets might result in some wins that you may not be able to predict. And in some cases for clients and for ourselves, a thought leadership piece of content that didn't have a lot of search volume ended up closing a big client because it was interesting enough for this person to see how we think about a particular topic that got them to purchase. Or it might be a piece of research that gets a lot of backlinks. And we'll get into another example soon. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice. HubSpot's a fine example, but again, they're in a different sort of playground compared to us. One example that we've noticed doing really well that's a company we love the product, is Ahrefs. So when you look at their blog, you'll see that their content is product-led. It's focused on that whole customer journey, from someone wanting to learn SEO from scratch all the way down to teaching them how to use their product on a product blog. So here it goes from the very top of the funnel of how to learn SEO, really basics like on-page SEO, and getting in depth into things like e-commerce SEO guide, and even things like broken link building. So they get really advanced with their tactics and also tie this back to the customer journey and their products. The thing that they did extremely well is their buzzworthy content. This is an example that I found out about recently, which is the cost of buying links. This is a really interesting topic in the SEO and content world because building links is tough. And what Joshua at Ahrefs did is reached out to over 600 blogs to find out how much they charge for backlinks and created this comprehensive report of what the average cost to buy a link is. And the interesting thing here is on the right with the red box, you can see that they actually surface parts of their product in their content. Here, they show the article stats, which is data from their Content Explorer tool. And it shows how many websites are linking to this blog post and how many tweets it's getting. So this is another way they're being product-led. They're actually showing their product in their content. Another example is this data-driven guide to anchor text. And again, you can see here, this is something that they've likely put a lot of effort into producing, analyzing almost 400,000 web pages, and they got over 700 websites linking to this page. So this was something where it's expensive content, it's time consuming. You need someone to analyze the data and package it up, tell a story. But they committed those resources to take this bet, and they got the benefits from those websites linking to them. So hopefully this gives y'all a good idea of what the barbell strategy is, how to shift your portfolio from just SEO driven to kind of taking some of these big bets. And seeing some of these examples in practice might be helpful in helping you understand how you can apply the barbell strategy. Thanks.
Boom. Thank you very much, David. Got time for questions as well. So, the question by Suba, are there any examples from HubSpot of bets that did not succeed?
Ooh, I have two that I can talk about that I was personally involved in. We thought marketers would be interested in the idea of being able to benchmark their email open rates to other folks in the industry. And so at HubSpot, we had this internal data that we anonymized based on how customers use the product, how many emails all our customers sent, and how many of those emails were opened. We segmented them by industry, created this interactive tool, and then started doing a lot of promotion around it. And that was honestly a flop. People weren't very interested. There was already content around that. And we can go back and forth on whether maybe we didn't do the execution of the tool correctly, or maybe the data just wasn't interesting. But that was actually a disappointment for us. And we did something similar with close rates. So we looked at the amount of deals people created in HubSpot and the amount of deals that they marked as closed as sort of a benchmark, split that by industry. And we created this data set that said in manufacturing, the average close rate is 10%. In B2B marketing software, the average close rate is 20% and things like that. And again, we can argue on whether maybe the execution wasn't right, but that didn't work out. Maybe there was something we could have done better, but unfortunately, our execution and maybe the data set wasn't very interesting for folks.
Thank you very much. More questions. Kenneth is asking, is SERP beginning to be more important than getting #1 keyword ranking?
I'm not entirely sure what that question is asking.
Yeah, so Kenneth, can you elaborate? I'm also like, is search engine results page beginning to be more important again? So I mean, like, is getting on just page 1 as important as #1 now? Like traffic, of course, you get way more clicks if you're #1. Okay, Tommy here is asking, what is your approach on balancing the higher volume, broad audience pages versus those very specific pages that may not get as much traffic but are closer to the purchase?
Yeah, I would look at this in terms of where your content gaps are to start, and also what the customer journey is. At HubSpot, one of the things that I found was, hey, we have a bunch of this top of funnel content that's bringing in traffic. We don't actually talk about our product much, and there's nothing actually trying to convert users besides these pop-ups for leads. There's nothing talking about our product. And I'd say, one, don't just look at search volume to drive what content you create. Actually ask yourself if that's related to your products, your service, and what your audience is interested in. And then look at your content gaps, because you might find you're heavy on bottom of funnel content that doesn't have search volume, but now you might want to grow your top of funnel. So look at the keywords that are would be interesting to your audience and see which ones actually have search volume around them.
Next question here. If you don't have a large team like HubSpot, what is the best way to create quality content? What are the strategies to get backlinks from quality websites? So kind of, have a go.
Yeah. I'd say that the best place to start is if you're the founder of the business, you're going to be the best person to talk about your product and what you know about the industry. So you would need to dedicate time to producing your own content. Pep, I'm sure that's how you started. You just said earlier, you were trying to write the best content as possible on your particular topics. You can't really outsource that type of thought leadership. I mean, maybe at some point you can hire a freelancer to create content and interview you, but that won't be in the same type of voice and it won't have the same type of conviction as if it were coming from the founder themselves. So I'd recommend, don't outsource that immediately. Try to start developing your thoughts around your industry and your product that you can then teach to others.
Exactly. I think in early stages when you're like very scrappy, you just need to brute force a lot of things, meaning like you put in more hours. It's not very sustainable. Hopefully you're young. I mean, when I started CXL, I was 30, relatively young. And I could still do like all-nighters to write those articles. I wouldn't be able to do it anymore now that I'm so old. All right.
You still got a lot of energy running 3 companies though.
Yeah. Okay. What would be your advice to coming up with an idea for buzzworthy content?
This is going to sound silly, but pay attention to Twitter. Scroll through your Twitter feed and see what people are sharing. Let's get a ton of retweets. That tends to be the stuff that people are paying attention to. That's worth sharing. I'd also say, I don't say this often, but consume a lot of content. Look at the companies that are producing this really interesting stuff and get inspiration from them. Don't just copy them. Some examples I look at are the New York Times coronavirus data. That is amazing data science and visuals and storytelling. That's super useful. When I need an update on how a country or a state is doing, I search NY Times coronavirus and a city. And I share that with friends and I'm like, oh, looks like we have another spike, which hopefully that doesn't happen. I also look at first round review as an example. I think looking at Harry's marketing examples as well is something really interesting. Look at what these really great companies are doing and just learn from them, get inspiration. And Thomas to share exploring topics. That's awesome. Yeah.
My personal tip for buzzworthy topics is Twitter search. So you have the min faves filter. So look at a guy or a girl who is talking about your topic. Let's say B2B marketing. Oh, it's TG. Look at his put min faves filter to 500. Which tweet has gotten at least 500 likes or whatever, and then you can see the patterns. And you can do that with also less famous people. All right, let's see if there is any other. I think we've got it. So, David, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll catch you on Twitter, beomniscient.com. Go check it out.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Thanks.
Cheers.